Thank you, Senator Kane. I think one thing we're getting out of this so far is that General Hawk Carlisle was right when he's talking about we have more mission than money, manpower, and time. That refers not just to the Air Force, but across the board. And I know that's the situation we're in right now, and it's very disturbing. Secretary James and General Walsh were before this committee I think it's 2 weeks ago, and they said prior to 1992, the Air Force procured an average of 200 fighter aircraft per year. In the 2.5 decades since, curtailed modernization has resulted in procurement of less than an average of 25 fighters yearly. Now, that's General Goldfein, that is pretty disturbing. How are we keeping situation?
Yes, sir. Thanks. So over the last 15 years, while the nation has been very singularly focused in many ways on the violent extremism threat and fight in the Middle East, each service has made strategic trades based on demand signals on what we provide to the Joint Team. For the Air Force, the demand signal has been primarily in space, cyber, ISR, and the nuclear enterprise. And so you'll see in our budget that we invest in those. And so when you're trying to balance against those, there's only two places you go to balance, and that's people and conventional air power.
Yeah. So we were talking about fighter squadrons there, yes, and I can remember not too many years ago, I think they, through necessity, did away with 17 or stood down 17 fighter squadrons. And I remember at the time we were making statements, and I did before the General Committee, that it costs more to reinstate those than anything that is saved in that short period of time by standing down those fighter squads. You agree with that?
Yes, sir, I do.
We had the actual figures of that, and it's pretty astounding. That,
yes, sir.
And then talking, and I would also mention the chairman of the committee, Senator Ayotte, talked about what's happening over there, what our competition is doing. And as we find ourselves in a situation where we are downgrading, China and Russia are not standing still. And I see this gap closing, the J-20, I guess, or J-20 in China and the T-50 in Russia. They're closing in on us. And the China's J-20, it's my understanding, would be a real competitor to our F-35 and F-22. So we have those problems. And when you talk about failing, and we all said that it's modernization that is paying the bill for a lot of this stuff. We're not preparing for the future. I can remember, and I direct this at our Army and our Marine vices. Are you aware that my last year on the House Armed Services Committee, before I came to the Senate, we had people testifying that in 10 years we would no longer need ground troops. Remember that? Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying is when you talk about modernization, you have two problems. One, modernizing equipment, and the other is on your mission, modernize your mission. If we were to sit here right now, you guys are all smart, and determine what are our needs going to be 10 years from today, you're going to be wrong. And the only way, if we are going to try to reinstate our position as superiority, is to go ahead and do what's necessary in all the possible scenarios that might be taking place in 10 years from now or 20 years from now. And you have to stop. You can't wait 8 years and then determine what to do. So I would hope that you'd consider that to be a major problem that we need to address, in that we don't know what our needs are going to be. And the American people out there, they don't know that we aren't already superior in every possible scenario put together. And I think that's something. Now, I don't disagree with Senator Kane, although let's keep in mind that when we were testifying, I think it was General Walsh or one of them said that in 1964, we spent total 52% of our total expenditures on defense, and today it's 16. Now, when you read further, you do find the culprit in there is in the entitlements that we're going to have to address, and I would agree that we're going to have to get there. But nonetheless, whether it's entitlements' fault or anybody else's, we're still down there to a small fraction of what we considered to be the priorities to defend America at that time. Did we find, General Goldfein, when we talked about the, we brought this up when we had your boss in here and talked about the fact that we today have 33, he said 34 at that time, this just last week, fighter squadrons into our first conflict since Vietnam, or today. But in 1991, we had 134 combat-coded fighter squadrons. Would you say that we, again, ask you kind of the same question we did before, did we have too many at that time? And how can we justify this kind of degrading in terms of the numbers of fighter squadrons?
Yeah, thanks, sir. I would say that we did not have too many. We had actually what we needed to go, and that was a result of the vision of the Vietnam generation who built our force back after Vietnam, gave us the force we needed when we wanted to go in. Our challenge today is that for an Air Force, and we all build and sustain readiness a little bit differently, but I'll tell you, for an Air Force, when we say that we require the force to be, 80% of the force to be ready, it's because if you take a look at the timelines of the operational plans that the combatant commanders rely, approximately 80% of the Air Force is forward within 120 days. So we have to have that capacity to be able to meet the defense strategic guidance.
Yeah, okay, and lastly, in this morning's, one of the publications, they kind of relived what happened to our Harrier that caught fire here just the other day. And I think it was General Neller said that he raised the question as to whether readiness shortfalls had contributed to what has become a 5-year high in aviation mishap rate. That's really astonishing, a 5-year, and it affects all you guys, a 5-year high. Now that you've had some time to think about it, what do you think about that in terms of what could have been the cause of the Harrier with the fire accident that it's a few days ago?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Inhofe. We are concerned about the safety of the aircraft. We're not concerned, let me rephrase that, sir, that's incorrect. We're not concerned about the safety of the aircraft. The aircraft are well designed, well built, well maintained, and well flown by great
around
pilots.
though since 1985.
But we are concerned about an increasing number of aircraft mishaps and accidents, and we are, although that particular one is under investigation, Senator, we're looking to see if there's a linear correlation. We know historically that if you don't have the money and you don't have the parts and you don't have the maintenance, then you fly less. Sure. And we call it sets and reps. You need sets and repetitions to keep proficiency up there. So we truly believe that if you fly less and maintain slower, there's a higher likelihood of accidents. So we're worried.
On schedule now, this, I think they're ultimately going to be replaced by the F-35Bs. Is that correct? And the date for ultimately replacing all of them would be 2025. Is that information correct?
That is correct, Senator.
Do we have enough Harriers to last that long?
We have sufficient inventory, sir. We have to keep up the maintenance on them.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.